What if I told you that narcissism is deeply rooted in childhood? That's right. Many narcissists didn't just wake up one day and decide to be this way. They were actually taught certain things as kids that shaped how they see the world and how they treat others. Today, we'll look at some of those early lessons. Things that might seem small on the surface, but have a big impact later in life. Here are the 9 things narcissists were taught as kids that you weren't. Are you ready for number 1? Your worth depends on performance or appearance. Instead of being loved just for being themselves, they were praised only when they looked good, got high grades, or made someone else proud. Over time, they started to believe their value came from how they performed or how they looked, not who they truly were inside. This taught them to constantly chase approval and hide anything that didn't look perfect. Deep down, they never felt good enough unless they were impressing someone. It's not vanity, it's survival in a world where love feels like a reward, not a given. And when that becomes your reality, it's easy to confuse attention with affection and control with connection. That's the kind of emotional blueprint many narcissists were unknowingly handed as kids. Let's talk about number 2. Vulnerability is weakness. Crying won't fix anything, so stop it. Does that sound familiar? Many narcissists grew up hearing things like that, or worse, being mocked or punished for showing any kind of emotion. Over time, they learned that being sad, scared, or even just honest about how they felt wasn't safe. Vulnerability was seen as weakness, something to avoid at all costs. So they built emotional walls and put on a tough front. Not because they didn't feel things, but because they were taught those feelings made them unlovable or too much. What looks like arrogance or coldness in adulthood often comes from fear of being emotionally exposed. Behind the mask, there is often a desperate hope to be understood and accepted. But without permission to feel, that hope can turn into guarded silence. Let's move on to number 3. You must be the best, or you're nothing. Second place is just the first loser. Have you ever heard that growing up? For many narcissists, that kind of thinking wasn't just a joke. It was the rule. They were raised in homes where being average wasn't okay, and where being the best was the only way to feel noticed, accepted, or loved. If they didn't win, if they weren't praised, they felt like they didn't matter. So they pushed themselves to be perfect, or at least to look perfect. And over time, they started to believe that anything less than being exceptional meant they were a failure. It wasn't about confidence. It was about fear. Fear of being ignored, rejected, or made to feel small. Now let's continue to number 4. You must always be in control. If you're not in control, something bad will happen. That's the hidden fear many narcissists grew up with. In their childhood, things may have felt chaotic, unpredictable, or even scary. So they learned early on that the only way to feel safe was to be in charge. Whether it was controlling their emotions, their environment, or even other people, it became a survival strategy. Letting go, trusting others, or admitting they didn't know something felt way too risky. So, even as adults, they try to control conversations, plans, and relationships, not out of confidence, but because deep down, they're terrified of feeling powerless again. It's not about wanting to dominate. It's about trying to avoid the fear and helplessness they once felt. And unfortunately, this coping pattern often ends up pushing people away, even when what they really want is closeness. You shouldn't miss number 5. You're special and entitled. You're not like other kids. You're better. Have you ever heard that growing up? Some narcissists did, over and over. They were constantly told how amazing, talented, or gifted they were, sometimes without being taught humility, empathy, or limits. Instead of learning that everyone has value, they started to believe they were above the rules or more important than others. This wasn't their fault. It was a message drilled into them, often by parents trying to boost their own image through the child. Over time, it created a mindset where they expected special treatment, got frustrated when life didn't go their way, and believed they deserved more just for being who they are. It sounds like confidence, but it's usually insecurity wrapped in entitlement. Are you still up for number 6? There's no room for mistakes. For many narcissists, making a mistake wasn't treated as a normal part of growing up. It was treated like a failure of character. Instead of being guided through errors with patience, they were shamed, yelled at, or made to feel stupid. Over time, they learned that admitting fault meant opening themselves up to humiliation or punishment. So, they adapted. They started blaming others, making excuses, or flat out denying they did anything wrong. It wasn't about being dishonest for the sake of it. It was self-protection. In their world, being wrong wasn't safe, so they'd do anything to avoid it. And as adults, this fear of failure still drives them to protect their image at all costs. Sadly, it often keeps them from growing, healing, or forming real, honest connections. Let's keep it moving to number 7. Relationships are hierarchies, not partnerships. Do you believe someone always has to be in control in a relationship? That's often how narcissists were raised to think. Like every relationship is a power game, not a partnership. Instead of learning that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect and teamwork, they were taught that someone always has to be on top and the other beneath. Maybe they saw it at home, where one parent dominated, or where love was tied to obedience and control. So, as adults, they often try to assert themselves or keep others beneath them, because that's the only way they know how to feel safe or important in a connection. This mindset can make it really hard for them to trust others or share power equally. Deep down, they're often scared that if they don't control everything, they'll lose the love or respect they desperately want. Here comes number 8. Boundaries are selfish. Have you ever felt guilty just for saying no? That's exactly how many narcissists were taught to feel growing up. They were raised to believe that having boundaries, like asking for space, saying they didn't like something, or standing up for themselves, was rude, selfish, or even disrespectful. In their world, love often came with conditions, and saying no could mean losing approval or affection. It's not always about being cruel. It's just how they learned to survive in a world where having personal limits wasn't allowed. To them, boundaries can feel like rejection or a threat rather than something healthy and normal. That's why they often struggle with both setting boundaries and honoring the ones set by others. Deep down, they may fear that if they let people have space or say no, they'll be abandoned or lose control. So instead, they try to keep tight control over relationships, even if it pushes people away. Finally, we're down to number 9. Silence and withdrawal are punishment tools. Have you ever wondered why some people go totally silent during an argument? Well, narcissists often learned from a young age that silence and withdrawal can be powerful tools to punish or control others. Instead of talking things out or expressing feelings in a healthy way, they saw emotional withdrawal, like giving the cold shoulder or ignoring someone, as a way to gain power in a situation. It's like saying, if you don't do what I want, I'll just disappear emotionally. For them, this wasn't just a random habit. It was something they picked up early on, maybe from adults around them who used the same tactics. Over time, it became their go-to way of dealing with discomfort or conflict. Unfortunately, it often leaves the other person feeling confused, hurt, and shut out. So now you can see that narcissists weren't just born that way. They were shaped by what they learned growing up. That doesn't excuse their behavior, but it helps you stop taking their behavior personally and start setting better boundaries. At the end of the day, you deserve relationships that are honest, kind, and emotionally safe.